Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the eBay global shipping program and what happens when things go wrong with it. Specifically, we're going to be talking about undelivered items, undeliverable items, and returns. So if any of these have happened to you, drop me a comment. Let me know what your experience was, what happened. I'm going to tell you what happened with me recently, but I think whether you're a buyer or a seller, this video will be relevant to you. So before we get started, the important thing to remember about the eBay global shipping program, particularly if you're a seller, but also if you're a buyer, is something to bear in mind, is that once the seller sends the item to eBay, which is how it works, we'll go over that in a second, but eBay is actually the owner. eBay is responsible for it, not the buyer. So we'll dip into that more. I'm going to show you through the medium of Transport Tycoon. I'm just going to give you some examples of what happened. So I sell stuff on eBay. I've been selling stuff on eBay for years, and I've actually been using the global shipping program for years. So this is me. This is the town where I live, and I sold an item. So here's the post van. He's coming to pick my item up, and he's going to take it to the eBay GSP warehouse because the person who bought my item lives in America. I live in the UK. As you can tell, look at all these fields, it's lovely. So what's going to happen is that little van's going to come and basically he's going to take it to the eBay GSP warehouse, which is close to an airport. And once it reaches here, eBay is going to process it. They're going to process all the taxes, and they're going to and the shipping to send it to America. So we'll just pretend that over here is America. So the final destination for this package is some town in Milwaukee. I've no idea where Milwaukee is other than that it's in America. I did actually look it up briefly. It looked quite nice where he was. I do like looking at where people live, I've got to tell you. So this is the plane, and it's just landing with my package. So it's arriving somewhere on the East Coast. I think it said New Jersey. That's what the tracking said. And the little post van in New Jersey, the USPS, or what's it called, Pitney Bowes delivery truck is picking it up, and it's going to take it to some town in Milwaukee. Now, what happened with my parcel, and this is what happens with every parcel, you know, there's the first leg over here. The seller is responsible for this leg. You've got to send it to, not to an oil refinery, to a warehouse, and then eBay sends it on a plane to the country where it's going to go, and then from there they arrange the local sort of side of the shipping. So what happened with this is my little van, or the little van, went to deliver my item, and the buyer wasn't in, so they rescheduled it for the next day, and he wasn't in again. And I don't know how it works in America, but I have had this before where when you send things to people from abroad, sometimes they don't get notified that someone's tried to deliver it. So especially if it needs a signature. In the UK, you get like a, particularly from Royal Mail, but from most couriers, you get like a red thing through the door to say you weren't in and we had an important parcel for you. Come and get it or rearrange the delivery, and you've got 2 weeks, or else it's going. You know, it'll disappear. So I sold something a long time ago, and to someone in America, it was a collectible coin, and they started hassling me for where is this thing, and eventually I used the tracking number to work out that it was in their town, and it was in their post office, or whatever you call a post office in America, and nobody had told this chap that his coin was there. So I suspect that might be what happened here, but I don't know what happened. So anyway, the bottom line is the guy didn't get his item, so naturally he opened a case on eBay. He said, well, I haven't got my item. I've checked the tracking and it says it's been returned to sender. So coming back to the global shipping program, there is I'll put a link to this later on, by the way, this website. There is a section about undeliverable items. You know, my buyer now, how will my buyer now know that this was deemed undeliverable? And there's some things about payments to do with undeliverable items. Undeliverable and undelivered aren't quite the same thing, but they're treated in the same way. And it's not the way that I was expecting. So when the buyer saw on the tracking that it had been returned to sender, he assumed that, and to be fair, I assumed it as well, that the item was going to get back in, it was going to stay on this truck, come back to the airport in New Jersey, get back on this plane, fly back over here to the UK, and then get back on this little truck and come back to my house. That may yet happen, but this was, I'm trying to think, this was was at least 3 weeks ago, and I haven't seen the item. And having spoken to someone at eBay, which is what I had to do to get the answers, because this page was sorely lacking, I don't think I will ever see the item again, and I don't think the buyer will ever see it. So what actually happens is, once it gets to here, eBay effectively owns it. eBay is, if anything, eBay is the seller. So they take the risk. Once it gets to this point here, once the van drops it off, eBay takes the risk. eBay sends it here. And so when the buyer opened a case, I was pretty sure that I'd done my bit and I'd done it properly. So I get tracking. You know, when you sell things, I don't know what the buyers get because I've never bought anything through the GSP, but I have sold lots of things through the GSP, and you get tracking. You get data to say your thing has reached us, and your thing is on its way, and your thing has been delivered. But I didn't get any tracking to say this thing is coming back to you or this thing hasn't been delivered. What I ended up doing was, because once someone opens a case against you in eBay, as the seller, you've only got 5 days to do something. Once the choices are, you can send them a message to explain what's happening, you can give them a full refund, or you can update the tracking info. Now, the tracking info was already very up to date. I'd sent the tracking info because it was a £25 item. I sent it by recorded delivery to the UK, for the UK part of the leg. So to get it from the town where I live to the GSP warehouse, that had tracked delivery. So I got I could prove that it had gotten here, and I also had notifications from eBay to say that it got there. So I couldn't update the tracking info, and I didn't want to give him a refund because this thing says I'm not responsible. So what I did was I sent him a message and said, look, this is what it says. I'll have a look at the tracking. It is in America still. Maybe you can get it redirected. So I left it with him, and he messaged me back the next day to say, I've tried to get it redirected and I can't. It's gone. I think by this time it had already gone from, because he obviously lives in some town in Milwaukee, and by this point the tracking had sort of ended here. So we don't know if the item went here and then was kind of absorbed by eBay somehow, or if it came back to here, and if it is indeed slowly winging its way back to my house, we'll never know unless it turns up at my house. What I suspect has happened is it's actually going to be auctioned off by eBay, either in America. Probably it would make more sense for them to do it in America, but possibly here as well. He said, well, I still haven't got my thing, but I can't get the package back, so what are we going to do? So I then phoned eBay, because I went through this and I didn't find anything other than the fact that I'm protected. I didn't find anything about what happens. So there was lots of stuff about Undeliverable, and it was most of the stuff about Undeliverable are things like either the item's been damaged in transit, or the address is wrong, the person's moved house, whatever. So none of it was relevant, and there was this bit. So this is the only thing that was actually relevant to my thing, was unable to deliver, return to sender. So if an item is processed, yada yada yada, the last mile carrier, which is Pitney Bowes in this case, Pitney Bowes. So according to them, this is the last mile, so between the airport and the final destination. So if they cannot deliver the item for any reason, and the item is marked unable to deliver, return to sender, then it will be returned to the last mile carrier or the UK shipping centre as appropriate. So it doesn't say it's coming back to my house. It doesn't say it's coming back to me. It might do, and I might update the video if it does, but I'm not holding my breath. The only difference between this and the Undeliverable is that it says here, with the Undeliverable ones, it says, let's say it's been damaged in transit and it's all mangled. It says you won't be reimbursed, you won't be responsible for reimbursing eBay for this refund, and the item will be disposed of appropriately as an undeliverable item. So that could mean it'd be thrown in the bin or recycled if it's completely smashed up, or it might mean we stick it on a pallet for the other mystery items and it gets sold off at an auction, which is what I think will happen. So what I had to do is first I came to this page, didn't find my answer, and I came here to the agent. Don't do this. The only reason you should do this is to get access to an actual agent, a real human. So I know eBay does do AI now. They have got AI in the listings, but whatever they bought isn't very clever. It's not there's definitely A with a small I. It's not very intelligent, and it's useless. So if you type in "give me a human" enough, it will eventually say, "Would you like a callback?" And when I did that, I got a very quick answer, and they were the guy on the other end was very, very helpful. And what he did, what he said was essentially, he didn't say out loud, and he didn't say explicitly, "You're never going to see your item again," but he certainly implied it. And essentially what he said was, "You've done the right thing. I'm gonna close the case in your favor," which is unusual as a seller. Unless you've been like really blatantly scammed, then it's really unusual for eBay to do that. So the guy said, "I'm going to close the case in your favor, and your buyer, who is now out of pocket, he'll have to appeal the decision made by eBay and get his refund that way. But and eBay, if he does that, eBay will refund him, because it's their risk, essentially, because the problem happened between here and here, then it's eBay's risk, because it already landed in the eBay warehouse." So I was kind of, obviously I was really happy at not losing £25 because eBay had already frozen the money. I felt bad that the guy, the buyer, genuinely hadn't done anything wrong, and he was out of pocket. So I sent him a message straight away to say, "It's a bit of a strange one, but this is what you need to do. The case has been closed. You need to phone eBay. Don't use the chatbot because it's useless. Phone eBay, talk to an agent, and they'll know exactly what's going on, and they'll sort it out really quickly, and you'll get your refund for definite. You'll definitely get your money." So he was a bit miffed, but he was all right. He sent me a message later on to say, "I'm a bit annoyed that I had to jump through the hoops, but thanks for the tip. I phoned an agent, and I got everything sorted out really quickly, and I got my refund." So obviously he was a bit down. He bought this thing and had to wait a month or in total, and didn't get it. But it certainly could have been a lot worse, particularly for me, because I nearly refunded them. Yeah, so that's essentially Undelivered and Undeliverable are treated the same in that, essentially, whether you're the buyer or the seller, it's not really your fault. I think if you're the buyer and you put the wrong address, then maybe it is your fault. But generally speaking, if it's if something happens to it on the way there, then it's not your fault. So but just remember, whether you're the seller or the buyer, the seller is only responsible for the first bit of the journey. So, but I think as a buyer, you probably still do have to open a case against the seller to say, "Where is my item?" But just be prepared to have that case closed against you and have to jump through an extra hoop of telephoning eBay during office hours in your country and say, "Hey, I've been done out of my money by you. Please give me my refund," and you'll get it, because eBay. I've talked about it before on the channel, but eBay nearly always favour the buyer, even if they shouldn't do, just because they need buyer confidence to exist. So they're always going to favour the buyer. So it's slightly different for returns, and this is something else I didn't realise. Luckily, the default setting is that you don't accept international returns, because I assumed that, let's say I sent this thing and it got to here and it obviously went to America. Let's say the guy had received it and he'd opened it and he went, "Oh, I don't like it. I've changed my mind. It's not the one I wanted. I want to return it." Or worse yet, if they'd seen a little scratch on it or something and said, "Right, well, it's not as described. I want to return it," then I just assumed that they would, eBay would send them a label. It would get back on this little van that's just broken down, come back to this way, and basically it would just do the whole GSP thing in reverse, and it would stay in the GSP. But that is not the case. So essentially, if you send something via GSP and your buyer wants to return it, that's up to you, between you and the buyer. So basically, you've either got to get your buyer to agree to a discount, or hope they just go away, which they're probably not going to do, in most cases. Or, because if you don't agree to a discount, eBay, you've only got two choices then. Like, either you basically ignore it and eBay will give them a full refund, and probably give you sort of negative algorithm juice, that affect your sort of eBay seller rating and things like that on the back end, as well as potentially getting negative feedback from the buyer. Or you give them a full refund, or worse yet, you could actually make them return it, which would probably piss them off even more than just giving them a refund and letting them keep the thing they don't really want. because if they've got to go through the hassle of actually returning it, because getting to a post office is easier for some people than it is for others. It depends very much where you live. It's also going to be expensive for you. Yeah, essentially be very careful about returns. And I suppose I would say you've always got to be careful with your descriptions. Just being if you're going to be a good eBay seller, if you're going to do it properly, describe your items properly. Don't be one of these kind of cheesy sellers who kind of invites cases being opened against them. I would double check your settings when you sell on the GSP, on the global shipping program, because you need to make sure that it says no international returns, or that's what I would advise anyway. Like I said, if you've had a similar experience, I mean, I suspect if you've found this video, you're looking for, you've had some sort of issue with the global shipping program. So please drop me a comment, let me know what's happened and what your experience was, how you found it. But thank you for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks, bye bye.